MediWales is the life science network for Wales. We have about 180 members, and we're an independent organisation. We include medical technology companies, service companies, academia, research, and clinical organisations, which is why we don't call ourselves a trade association, because we do cover all flavours within the sector, including government. So we really do provide the network, the glue, to bring together all of those organisations in a sector that is absolutely dependent on interaction and networking. Those of you who have been through product development process or a research process know that it's absolutely vital in life sciences that we combine academic, industry, clinical, and services expertise. And when I say services, I mean finance, new product development, and intellectual property and legal. So it's a rich and varied sector, and we all need each other. And given the situation over the last year, networking has been particularly difficult in one respect. It's been very difficult for us to get together, to be in the same room, to put up our pop-up stands and to wander around having a cup of coffee and introducing ourselves to people. And I know myself and Debbie and Izzy really dearly hope that those kind of events will be back soon. What it does mean is that we've all really pivoted well to delivering online events, and that has the advantage that there's really no geographic limitations. So in some respects, we've been able to network better, and we've been able to bring together more people and keep that glue for the sector and its networking in place. So our role has been an important one over the lockdown, as has everybody in the sector, and there really has been a spotlight on life sciences for obvious reasons. Now, I'm just going to go through a couple of housekeeping points. You'll notice from the top left hand of your screen that we are recording today. And so we record the events, and we will be posting them on YouTube. So if you would keep that in mind, especially because we are talking about new product development and intellectual property. I will probably ask Simon, who's our intellectual property expert on the day, just to give us a little bit of a top tip in terms of disclosing ideas. But what we'd really like to just give you a heads up about is, by all means, share your concerns, your problems, your issues, any questions for the panel, but please don't fall into the trap of disclosing confidential information. If you want to have a confidential chat with any of our speakers, then I'm sure they'd be more than happy to talk to you after today's event in private. But I just want to warn everybody that the intention of this event is to put it out as far and wide as we possibly can, both live today and on YouTube afterwards. If you are watching on YouTube, welcome, thank you very much. And in the time-honored fashion of the YouTubers, if you could click the thumbs up and subscribe to our channel, then you'll get lots of more great content just like this. It's the first time I've ever said that. It's brilliant. Right, so moving on, today's going to be really interactive. We have a nice room of people. That means that we can actually engage with people. We can do some Q&A. We can share each other's advice and guidance, but also some concerns that maybe the experts can pick up and talk about. If you could use the chat function, firstly to introduce yourselves. This is a networking event. We do expect you to introduce yourselves. So if you just want to say hello and put your web address up there, then feel free. That's not being too forward. We're here to promote each other to our members. So please feel free to introduce yourself. But also, if you have any questions or anything you would like you'd like the panel to pick up on during their talk, then please put that in the chat function. And if you put it in early, then we can weave it into the conversation. If we have time, if we're able, we will turn on your camera, turn on your microphone, and ask you to elaborate on points that you might put in the chat. I'm just trying to get your top tips and your concerns out on the table early on, so that we can address them. I think that's all I'm going to say for the start. We're going to start by doing a few introductions. So I say that it's interactive and lots of Q&A, but I think it would help first if we've got a superb panel of speakers. So I would like to introduce our speakers, and we are covering new product development, intellectual property, finance and funding, and to as great a degree as we can, we will also cover regulation. A number of the members of the panel have also had to address device, pharmaceutical and diagnostic regulation in the past. So I would like, much as we don't have anybody who's a qualified regulatory consultant on the panel. So that's my legal disclaimer, but we've all had lots of experience of getting products through that process. So we will do our best to answer those questions as well. So I think, given that I mentioned the intellectual property and the confidentiality first, maybe I could bring Simon Haslam, who is patent attorney from Abel and Imray, to introduce yourself first, Simon. I'm going to go around the room and introduce everybody, and then we'll get on with a bit of Q&A. So Simon, are you in the room?
I certainly am. Thanks, Gwyn, for that. Yeah, I'm Simon Haslam, a patent attorney from Abel and Imray. We protect inventions, brands, and the appearance of products. And as Gwyn said, please do not disclose any information about your products here today. That could jeopardize any subsequently filed patent application. Yeah, really looking forward to talking to people today about product development, and the role that patents and other IP plays in protecting your products. And I think that's me done for the minute, Gwyn.
Oh, you caught me out there, Simon. Right, let's move on to Mark. Mark Henley, Managing Director of GX. Mark, who are you and what does GX do?
I'm Mark Helmich. I'm the Managing Director of GX Group, which is a group of companies offering product design and systems engineering. We've been in business since the early 80s, and we'll take ideas from a scrap of paper through full product development to and right into manufacturing through regulation. We're not regulation experts, as Gwyn has already pointed out, but we do have partnerships with regulatory authorities within and assessment houses within Wales. So we have a good network where we can take, like I said, a basic idea from conception right the way through to production.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mark. And I also know from our previous experience of having you as a panel member that as well as the product design, prototyping, and batch production, you've been through the product development process quite a few times. So you're a fairly good candidate for those top tips as well. So if anybody wants to ask Mark any difficult questions, then feel free. Okay, so Mike Fenwick, Associate Director of Verdi Corporate Finance. Mike, are you there?
I'm here. Thank you, Gwyn. As Gwyn said, my name is Mike Fenwick. I'm Associate Director at Verdi Corporate Finance. We're part of a group called the GS Verdi Group, which is a sort of multidisciplinary group that provides corporate finance services. We've got a legal firm, we've got an accounting firm in the group, and we've also got a PR and marketing company in the group. So the idea really is to provide a one-stop shop for corporate deals and raising finance, etc. So we deal with, I guess, clients from as well as the life sciences and medical sectors. We deal with clients from all sorts of sectors of all different shapes and sizes. And we also deal with a wide panel of funders ranging from high net worth individuals through to VCs, private equity, banks and alternative funders as well.
So
that's me.
Thank you very much, Mike. And so would I be right in saying you deal with funding and finance?
Yes, that's right. I've never developed a new product ever in my life, but I'm quite good at telling you how much it costs.
And hopefully planning for that as well.
Yeah.
Excellent, thank you very much. And then our final speaker, also in the area of finance, but a very different role, Mark Bowman, Senior Investment Executive for the Development Bank of Wales. Mark, are you there?
Hi, hello everyone, and good morning to you. Yes, I work in the Technology Ventures team at the Development Bank of Wales. We provide, in the main, equity finance for early stage businesses. We have a very active portfolio in terms of medical device and digital healthcare investments. I think in terms of product development, we think traditionally about physical product development in terms of the physical medical devices, but equally we put a lot of investment into businesses that are developing digital health products, and that also involves quite a lot of prototyping work, particularly with regard to usability and functionality. So I think that's worth bearing in mind. We regularly work with corporate finance houses such as the Verdi Group. So we interact on a regular basis with those companies that are advising early stage startups, and that's a source of potential investments for us. And likewise, intellectual property and product design are really key components. So, we have a broad network of professional firms that we work with alongside our investee companies.
And so thank you very much for that, Mark. Two quick points. I hope you don't mind me mentioning to the rest of the room, but you have a very strong background in intellectual property exploitation or bringing products to market from academia and from the private sector, as well as your finance background. So again, a very useful expert to have in the room if you've got any really difficult questions. So one other question one of the points I was going to make, Mark, was Finance Wales. When you look at their portfolio, there is quite a strong showing from life sciences. And is that still the case?
Yes, it certainly is, Gwyn. I mean, historically, we have investments that have been made in drug discovery and drug development. We've got quite a lot of portfolio companies operating in the diagnostics sector related to healthcare. We have business in ag biotech, so it's not just about human health. We invest outside of those areas. We've had some real success in terms of medical device. We were an early investor in Creo Medical, which is obviously a very important business in the Welsh network. In terms of life sciences companies, we've had a number of exits from those businesses, including ones that have floated on the stock market. But even with those companies that have floated, it's not a case of us having got rid of, offloaded all of our shares. We're still a significant shareholder in some of those floated businesses, so we're there for the long term.
Excellent. So it's I mean, the point I guess I'm underlining is the fact that that really with all of our experts, but with your organisation as well, Mark, as well as being there for the finance, there's a wealth of experience under the bonnet as well. So for companies who are going along that path, obviously accessing finance is a major priority for them. But there's
and we have a very strong network of co-investors. We regulate, well, we have to co-invest. It's part of our requirements, and as a result of that, we have a very strong network across the UK and internationally of co-investors. We also have our own angel investment arm, Angel Invest Wales, that is able to make introductions to high net worths in the region, which I think is valuable for very early stage businesses. And within TBI, we have three people that focus on healthcare. There's myself, I have a background in sort of pharmaceutical sciences. Phil Barnes, who is more focused on the biological side, and Richard Thompson, who looks after a lot of the medical device businesses. So, you know, we have got a broad range of expertise within the team specific to healthcare.
Absolutely, and all three of those people have been in the sector for a very long time, so they have a lot of experience. That's great. Thank you very much, Mark. So that's everybody. That's the introductions from everybody. Now I'm going to start by asking a few questions. But as I've said, I'm taking a look at the chat, and so far I've got some introductions. So so welcome, Wynne and Jessica and you, Ewan, and Daniel and Peter and Jane. Jane, you're not SM20995, you are Jane. So it's good to see you here as well, Jane, and Victoria. So all of you, thank you so much for saying hello. And if you've got any questions now that you've had the introduction of the expertise that we have in the room, then please do pipe up, and we'll feed those into the workshop today, and make sure it's more of a workshop and less of a seminar. So just as a warm up, so let me start with Mark, because I know, Mark, you have all sorts of people wandering into your studios. And they come from all different backgrounds. Where do life science medical ideas come from, Mark? Mark?
Me, sorry, I was just unmuting again. I keep forgetting about the mute. I mean, a variety. A lot of the time, it's individual medical professionals come up with ideas of how they could just improve the service and care they give. A number of private individuals who see themselves or partners or relatives struggling with care issues will think there must be a better way, and try and come up with ideas. And then, of course, the big companies, the likes of Bayer Diagnostics and Paul, who quite often come to us because they've maybe got a product that's a little bit dated. They want to try and compete with with their competitors on product ranges and expand their product ranges. So basically, anyone who's come across an area of healthcare, and they think they can see a way of improving the lot of individuals who are maybe not coping very well. So it's a variety. The big issue is it's fine for the sort of Pauls and the Bayers. They've got the money. Individual medics tend to be able to access money through health boards. It's sometimes somewhat limited, but health boards and universities will quite often fund. It's the private individuals that seem to struggle the most in finding money. So we've got a number of projects at the moment that are kind of good ideas, but lack money to take them forward. So that's always a problem. But yeah, just about anyone really and I think as you get older and maybe you see your parents struggling with things, it does start to make you question, well, is this the best way to do something? Is there a better way of anything from mobility aids, heating aids, right up to more, I think we're doing a couple of jobs for urine output analysis and collection, and so it's a variety. I think it's a huge swathe of people who come across these issues and think we can improve this. So
there must be a better way. That's often the source of the creativity, and then they've come up with their better way, and then they come to you to see what it takes to get it from being a good idea through to.
Well, sometimes they won't come up with a better way. They'll just come up with the idea there must be a better way, and that's the problematic one when they think they've got a problem and no solution. It's always helpful if they've got an inkling as to what the solution might be, because it's generally what they're seeing in front of them, rather than coming to us and saying, my mate broke his leg last week and he's hobbling around on these crutches. There must be a better crutch. And you sort of go, well, is there? So it's, yeah, there's a difference in view. Sort of there's some good IP questions around the idea that people will say the IP relies in identifying the problem, but it's not. It's in identifying the solution. So everybody can see problems in their day-to-day life, but unless you can come up with something to solve those problems, you haven't got any IP. You've just got a problem.
So that's when they come to the design agency and they want you to be an inventor.
Yes.
Rather than a designer.
Yes.
And that can be a bit of a challenge because you
Yeah.
have no idea whether you might come up with a brilliant idea.
Yeah.
Or you might not. And
no.
Yeah.
No, it's much more speculative if they haven't got an inkling of an idea of how to solve the problem in the first place. So it's quite often they'll come up with an idea that we can improve on. So that's always nice, that they'll come and present this, and you sort of sit down and talk them through, and you can say, actually, have you considered, and that borrowing of IP almost, but borrowing ideas from other industries. So we don't work exclusively in the life science sector. We've done jobs for the home, we've done baby beakers, we've got stuff in aircraft. So it's because we've got such a broad range of experience. Quite often you can borrow something that you did 5 or 6 years ago and relate it across into a life science product or take it into a consumer product.
Absolutely, I think it's a phrase, boundary innovation, I think is the one that I heard a long time ago, taking something from one sector and applying it to another. So that's presumably where having a multidisciplinary design company comes into its own, because even if you haven't done the same thing in the same sector, you might have solved the same technical problem in a different sector.
Yeah, definitely.
Great. Thank you. Simon, where do the ideas come from that walk through your door? What
Mark said, really. I mean, it's most of our clients are companies, universities. We don't have many private individual clients now. We do occasionally, mostly established companies who a lot of the time come up with an incremental development to what they're already doing. That's probably sort of 80-90% of our work. We deal with small clients, large clients, universities, startups. So a broad spread. Probably not so much the private individual. I would echo Mark's comments in relation to money. You know, getting a product designed, protected with patents, trademarks, whatever, approved by regulators is not a cheap business, and it's not, you know, these things are business tools. You know, getting a product designed properly, getting a patent application on it, you know, they're business tools to enable you to make money from your product. So that's just a caveat to people out there, really. These things cost. There's a reason they cost. It allows you to make money later on.
So it's not a hobby.
No, it's not a hobby. No, well, it might be if you've got the money. That's fine. You know, but if you haven't, then you got to realise these things do cost, and of course they give you a business advantage, or can do.
Okay. Yeah. So they give you an asset, so a
tradable
indeed. Asset.
A tradable asset. You know, if you've got a patent, you can keep people off your patch. You can stop them from using your invention. So that's why they're there. They're business tools. So
Mark, presumably you want to, if somebody walks through your door and they're looking for finance, presumably intellectual property is one of the first things you're looking for. Do they have any?
Yeah. Yes. I mean, particularly, especially with medical device and drug discovery opportunities, intellectual property is absolutely key. You know, depending on the source of the opportunity, the IP portfolios vary in size from individual patent applications through to, you know, small families of filed or granted patent applications. And I think, you know, one of the important things to consider here is that it's not just about having intellectual property in the UK. It's about having broader applications made in key territories. So, you know, for healthcare applications, you're looking Europe, US, Asia. And, you know, I think, I mean, Simon can comment on this further, but you can really limit yourself by, you know, ruling out certain territories at the national national phase, because obviously you need to make sure you're covered in the right areas. So you have to budget for that. And, you know, when we're looking at investment opportunities, we certainly have a really good amount of the due diligence goes into looking at the IP and also regulatory planning as well, because, you know, there's a world of difference between a you know, a medical device that requires full-blown regulatory approval as opposed to one where there are predicate devices, for example, where you can shorten that process. I'm sure we'll come back to that, but we look at those technical issues in great depth.
I'm sure, yes, definitely. So, so if I can go on to Mike. Mike, what is the? So you obviously get people coming in from all sorts of all walks of life as well. But do you deal with the lone inventor who says that there must be a better way, and hasn't actually come up with the solution yet, and definitely hasn't got any intellectual property, or have they moved further along by the time they talk to you? What do you recommend they talk to you?
I mean, it's probably mostly the latter, Gwyn, and I guess that there are two aspects here. I mean, you know, raising funding for new product development, you know, is inherently risky because the outcomes are uncertain, and you know, it's far more challenging than raising funding for an established business, and that's, you know, fairly self-evident. But I guess as well as the wherewithal and the experience to develop these new products, you know, in order to have a business, it has to be commercialized as well. And that's, you know, inventors tend to like inventing things and developing things, you know, without the ultimate view to commercialization in terms of how are we going to turn this business into profit. And, you know, from a funder's perspective, then how are we going to make a return on our investment or get our money back? So I think one of the key things here as well is the people behind the project as well as the product that they're looking to develop. So, you know, funders will ask the question, well, do they have a track record of previously developing these types of products? What's their experience in this sector? Sometimes it's better to have a team of people behind these things rather than an individual. So you have someone who's, if you like, leading the product development, but someone who's also leading the commercialization piece as well, in terms of talking to customers and you know, doing your market research to make sure that there is a market for this product, that there is a problem that needs to be solved. So I think you need both of those alongside each other to, you know, to make it a viable project that funders will have a look at.
So you picked up on a really important thing there, in terms of what the first things first are, and that's the market research. So presumably, when people come along and they say there must be a better way to mark, it's a really good idea for them to have done a bit of research and found out whether there's a better way, and they just haven't found it yet.
Yes, and the question is, you know, yes, there might be a better way, but, you know, do customers want to pay for that? Do they want to, you know, is there value in it for them? You know, can they identify some sort of value proposition from using that product or whatever that person is looking to develop? So yeah, I think that market research piece, Gwyn, is absolutely key, because, you know, it's pointless going down the route of new product development if there aren't any customers out there who are going to buy it. Okay,
no, that's really good point to make at this point in the process. So so in a slightly rambling way, we have we've just touched on the fact that, you know, where do the ideas come from, who's coming up with these ideas, and a number of the speakers have already mentioned that there's academic, clinical, industry, and inventor ideas. So there's a real mixed bag of how people come across these ideas. I think Mark comments there must be a better way is probably the source of an awful lot of people's perspective, even if whether they are clinicians who are working on the front line, or whether they are carers, or whether they've had a health problem themselves that they've felt there hasn't been a solution for. So I think that's a really good place to start. But then there was after the idea, there's do your desk research. There might well be a better way. You might not need to spend huge amounts of money developing a product, because somebody might already be doing it, and if they're doing it better or they're doing it cheaper, then do you really want to enter that market? And then if you do have a better idea, then you need to protect it. You need your intellectual property in place before you start talking about it, but also so that you've got a tradable commodity. And all of those things in the background of everything that the speakers have said so far, there's an underlying theme, which is there needs to be a business as well as an idea. There might be an idea or a problem, even, that Mark has pointed out. There might be a problem, then there might be an idea, and then there might be a product, and there might be intellectual property. But beyond all of that, there needs to be a business. And Mike has pointed it out, and Mark has pointed out as well. It's about the business proposition. It's not just about the product. So all of those things are vitally important. Now I'm going to move on, and I'm just going to give you a warning here, because I'm going to pick on a couple of the people who are in the audience, or so far just listening, because I'd like a little bit more of a perspective from the universities and the academic sector, because those two areas have been mentioned once or twice. So maybe if I could pick on Peter Jones. Sorry to do this to you, Peter, but I'm guessing from your introduction in the chat that you'd be a good person to talk to about health board ideas and where they come from and what you do with them. Would that be right, Peter?
Yes, I mean, the Tritech department we've just set up is very new, and we've learned from COVID that we needed to be more resilient. And of course, we have fantastic engineers and healthcare clinicians that can solve problems pretty quick. But we just didn't know where to go from ideas to producing something. So we established this Tritech, which hopefully we can work with universities and product development companies to sort of produce some sort of products that we could use in our health board, and possibly to answer other NHS and healthcare issues out there, especially with respiratory equipment, which we learned during the COVID. We could see a lot of people were putting together makeshift ventilators and breathing equipment, but obviously they would, in the heat of the moment, put in these products into service somewhere in their hospitals, because we didn't know how bad things were going to get, and you end up sort of not going through the proper compliance route, if you know what I mean. Luckily, we didn't get to that point, but that's what could happen, basically. And I'm here today to learn this journey, and hopefully work with you in taking it forward.
Absolutely, and I know that the various parts of Health, our University Health Board, seems to be packed with innovators and people trying to do projects. So it would be great to carry on that conversation. So that's the health board side. I'm going to pick on somebody who Jane Lewis, Cardiff Met. Could you tell me a little bit about where do ideas come from within the university, and what happens when you get someone with a bright idea? Where does it go from there?
Well, I'm probably speaking from my own experience, but I've been a clinician I was a clinician for 18 years with the NHS, and I suppose my ideas have been brewing the whole time that I was out working in the NHS. So I've been at Cardiff Met for 5 or 6 years now, still developing my ideas in my head. So I can only speak from my experience, as I said. So I identified a problem. I've got an idea of how I can resolve that problem. I've done some market research to see that actually it could work well. I suppose really I've got questions for all of you guys out there. I've done quite a bit of information gathering, but still feel quite naive about it all, because I'm a clinician, not a product development person or a true academic, I would say. So I don't know if now is the opportunity to ask questions or whether you want me to leave the questions till later, but I suppose from an ideas point of view, just the experience of working in the NHS, seeing what's out there now, seeing that it's not ideal, that it's been used for years and years, and therefore it claims to be the gold standard, but actually doesn't work in a lot of chronic diseases, but is still part of NICE guidelines at the moment because there's nothing better out there. So I suppose from an ideas point of view, that's where I'm coming from. I don't know if that's helpful.
It is, and you're right to not be sharing specifics with us. So that's great. No, I mean, if you've got any specific questions about the product development process, then yeah, throw one in now, and we'll
okay. Well, I think the patent side of things, so the IP bit, the protection, I've done a little bit of knowledge gathering and understand that, you know, the minute that you put your patent application in, the clock starts ticking for UK patent, and that within 12 months, and this is where I need to be corrected if I've got it all wrong, within 12 months, if you're going to be making applications outside of the UK, that's when you need to start doing it.
Yeah.
Costs, I understand in the UK, it takes about 4 to 5 years, but you can be developing a product whilst that process is happening, and that's around £9,000 or £10,000. And then European patents, they're not European blanket, it's country by country, and they have various costs. And again, US, I don't know if that's US as a whole, Asia as a whole, or whether it's, you know, sections within those countries. So a bit of advice on that, and when you should go there, which are the countries you should go to. Somebody's mentioned Germany as being a good place to start in Europe. So I'm way ahead of my time, but just would like that information ahead of time, if that makes sense, so I can plan better.
No, you're absolutely right. I mean, I think you really do have to plan these things. I mean, initially those estimates for a UK patent, probably about right. As you say, once you file your patent application, you normally file in the UK first. You've got 12 months to file in other countries. One way of doing that is what's called an international patent application. And that effectively gives you an extra 18 months before you have to pick particular countries. If you like, it defers the costs of filing in all the particular countries you want to, like the US and Japan and China. There is a European patent application that covers 30 odd countries in Europe. It's not the EU, so it's not to be confused with the European Union. So that basically will get you a patent that's granted effectively for 30 odd countries. But at the end of the process, you then have to convert that European patent application or European patent in each of the countries in which you want protection.
Okay.
So that can be really the costly bit. Because certain countries like Spain and Italy want you to translate the patent into Spanish and Italian. That gets a bit more expensive. So you're absolutely right. It's really good to plan those costs and get your patent attorney to provide you with a guesstimate of when all these costs will be incurred.
Okay.
Because certainly for Europe, that conversion process from, if you like, the European patent to putting it in force in all the countries you want it to be enforced can cost a lot of money. But you're right, US, an important market, a very important market. From the patent point of view, it's not always the easiest to get a patent in the US. Patent prosecution in the US is very, very unpredictable. But you're right, it's a good market to be looking at. And likewise, places like China, nowhere near as difficult to enforce patents in China as it once used to be. And it does vary, I understand, within China, within different regions of China, but certainly in the major cities on the eastern board, you know, the IP courts there are pretty good. Chinese Patent Office is based on the European Patent Office, so it's very sensible. But yeah, I think you're doing the right thing. Think about planning ahead.
Mm-hmm.
One thing also to think about is, well, you can have some searching done to see whether anything similar to your product has been developed before. Now, you can do a lot of searching on, you know, generally on the internet. There's a couple of websites you can search on. I'll put the addresses in the chat box in a minute.
Right.
And they concentrate on patent literature, because obviously there's a lot of information, there's a lot of inventions that have patents applied for them that never make it onto the market for whatever reason. And when you file a patent application, all the patent offices around the world will be looking at this patent literature, or, you know, to try and see whether you should get a patent. Because to get a patent, your invention needs to be different from what's gone before. And it also needs to be inventive, which means non-obvious, whatever that is. Varies from country to country. Yeah, so do some searching beforehand. You can do a lot of that yourself, or ask a specialist searcher to do it for you.
And I suppose that's the second bit of the question, was how specific and how detailed should your description be when you're applying for patent? Because I guess obviously you only have to tweak something slightly and it makes it different. So is it, how specific or how woolly should you make it?
Good question. You have to have enough information in the patent application so that someone working in that technical field can reproduce the invention.
Mm-hmm.
There are requirements in some words, and I can't remember off the top of my head whether there still are. In some countries like the US, you used to have to put what's called the best mode. So the best way of doing the invention in the patent application. You don't have to tell people it's the best one, but you still, I think you still have to do that. Anything that you might want to use to sort of limit your patent application as a sort of fallback in order for you to get a granted patent, you need to put details of that in the patent application.
Okay.
And certainly, if your invention relates to pharmaceuticals, then you will have to disclose, or any other chemical invention really, you will have to disclose, you know, the structure of that pharmaceutical, and, you know, whether it works or not.
Okay.
Not so much of an issue for non-pharmaceutical inventions.
Okay,
That's helpful.
Thank you for that. Sorry, Jane. Does that answer your question?
Yes, that's great. Thanks very much.
Okay. One of the things that comes across to me, Jane, is quite a lot of people, from my experience, are quite nervous about picking up the phone or sending that first email to a patent professional, to an intellectual property professional. I think there's a fear that the clock will be ticking as soon as you start engaging with the professional services, and in my experience, it's just not the case. As long as you show a bit of respect for people's time, and you know, IP professionals do make their money by selling their expertise and by following the intellectual property processes on behalf of their clients. But everyone I've met in that profession is more than happy to give some good, solid advice and guidance up at the start. And I know that Simon and Abel and Imre are no exception there. They are very helpful. And so maybe rather than doing what some people do, which is spend an awful lot of time online trying to work out what websites are saying about the process of intellectual property. I would just recommend having a chat to some people in our network, whether they're IP professionals or whether they're people who've got the experience and have done it before, because there is so much interpretation in terms of intellectual property and patent applications that would really be worth engaging with. So I'm just going to go. I've had a health board and I've had a university. So I'm going to pick on Victoria Norman, because I know that you're coming from a small business perspective who's been through the product development process. So Victoria, would you mind sharing with us just that first bit of where do the ideas come from and what do you do first, and maybe a little bit about intellectual property.
Hi there. Yeah, so the product, but I think we've covered quite a lot of that in terms of where do the ideas come from. A lot of it comes from people working within the sector. So the kind of operational aspects, the staff are usually the ones where the light bulb moments come on, and they can recognise where things may make efficiencies within the current service, or where something completely new would be beneficial to the health, the sector that they're working in. And I'm sure that's the same across any kind of market. So that's where we started from. We looked at kind of user journeys, and actually our sort of digital software is all about efficiencies within the current pathways. How do we make them more efficient, sort of supporting the current workforce, looking at the current user journeys within healthcare, away from diagnostics through to social. And then, sort of building on those ideas. So actually speaking to each of those stakeholders along that pathway that potentially will be your customers, and gaining their insights to whether that product is actually going to be fit for purpose. It's great coming up with the idea, but it's your idea. And if this is going to be scaled across sort of masses, then you've got to have a little bit more than just your idea and your input into it. So it's working right from sort of patient groups. Obviously, they're the ones that the customers that are using it, right through to those commissioners. Will they buy it? Is it going to be a cost-saving solution? So it's getting that engagement from all the users right from the off, and ensuring that you've covered most. Now, our experience is going through that is that you can do that to an extent. But actually, once your product goes live, you're going to get more feedback from those users. And actually, we're finding some of our customers have, a really long wish list of things that they want from our products. And actually, when it's deployed, they don't use half of them. So it's taken into consideration, the input from those users, and prioritizing them. What's that kind of minimal product look like, and does it suffice? We've got one product at the moment. It's really simple. Now, is simple better than adding all the bells and the whistles, like the AI, the chatbots? Is that going to make someone's life easier in doing their job? We don't know. But what we start with the simple solutions, and move from there. So that kind of minimal product, it's where you start from. And once you get the traction in there, that's when you can add the bells and whistles, as long as they're required. And those things take cost, and that's what we're looking at the moment. What do you invest in that actually is going to make your product better than your competitors, but also, is it going to get people using it more? I think that's the key to it. IP software is quite a hard area to look at. We inherited system with IP. It was a sort of a global IP as well. We kept some of them. We let some of them lapse. And actually, hindsight, we probably should have kept a few more. But as a startup company, the cost of maintaining, renewing those IPs is quite significant. So again, it's where do you put your investment at that time in terms of your business life cycle, I think, as well. So one question that we would probably put is that we've had patents before, can we reinstate patents? Is there a way of sort of revisiting them and resubmitting them? And what does that look like from the panel, really? Because we're at a different point in our business cycle where those patents would probably be quite useful. So we've got the boxes and boxes of documentation around those patents. So yeah, just some advice really from our perspective. I guess from a standoff point of view, it was really hard. We use kind of open source software. We're not sort of generating our own IP, and that might come further down the line when you start to get the data once your products are out there and you've got this sort of gold dust of data, and then you're using that data to generate AI, logics, algorithms, etc. And that's where, you know, probably the IP for us would come in. But we do have, or did have, existing IP that we'd like to maybe revisit. And that's a question for the panel, is can we do that?
Okay, I'm going to let Simon ponder that one for a minute, and I'm going to bring in Mark, Mark Bowman. Sorry, we've got two Marks on the panel. Mark, so it's quite clear there from those various conversations that intellectual property it's a process, it's a journey. It's not a single step that you have to achieve before you go and talk to the money men. So is that your experience? Are people in various places on their intellectual property route?
Yes, very much so, Gwyn. I mean, we see some companies approach us where, you know, they don't have any filings at all. That's, I suppose, relatively unusual, but we certainly see them. We also see companies that have made early applications, and so you know, in terms of maturity, the intellectual property is very immature. And, you know, like any asset, there is there's a risk associated with that. And the risk with intellectual property is that the application will never actually proceed to being granted. So, you know, whilst we're very pleased to see filings, one of the things we're very keen to look at are, international search reports, for example. So that's where the patent examiner at, the UK Intellectual Property Office or the European Patent Office has taken a look at the filing and examined any material that's available publicly to see if it's been done before. So we take a very good look at those search reports. We occasionally, have access to freedom to operate reports where, an independent consultant has taken a look at the intellectual property and what else is out there and taken a view on whether the owner of that patent application will be able to operate without having to pay fees to other people or license in other technologies. So yeah, we see a very broad range of maturity of the intellectual property, and sometimes we see instances where, for very sound economic reasons, there's been a sort of focus on the UK in terms of those initial applications. And, we're always keen to see how those type of opportunities can be expanded into international markets through, further filings of the intellectual property. And that's when it really helps to have a qualified patent attorney on the case, because, there's a hell of a lot of nuances in overseas filings, and you certainly wouldn't want me advising you on that. So I would certainly recommend talking to a patent attorney at that point. But the point is, we see a broad range. We work with founders to identify opportunities and try to add value by suggesting how the position might be improved.
Okay, that's great. Thank you for that. So one of the other things that Victoria picked up on was, she just touched on very briefly there. One was patient data, and the end user data. Now, we talk a lot about PROMs and PREMs these days, patient recorded outcome measures, and so it would be interesting to know from anybody in the chat or from any of the speakers whether patient input into new product development has become more important, more essential, either in terms of proving the product and improving the product and getting it to market, and also in terms of raising finance, and providing evidence to potential funders that you have a product that's needed. Yeah, I would like, if anybody can give me any perspective on PROMs and PREMs, then please do stick it in the chat or speak up, one or the other. Just while we're on the subject of research and data and providing evidence, let's bring Jessica Williams. I do realize that sometimes people are sitting there thinking, God, don't pick on me. But be prepared. I'm going to try and get through everybody throughout the next hour. So Jessica, you work for Health Technology Wales. And so I know for a fact you spend a lot of time searching for evidence for products that companies want the health service to adopt. And you need to find that evidence for the claims they make in terms of health economics and PROMs and PREMs and all of this is actually can be substantiated. So would you tell us a little bit about your process at Health Technology Wales and how that fits into new product development or marketing a new product?
Yes. Yeah, as you said, we are involved. Our main role is to gather evidence and produce rapid reviews where we critically appraise the evidence on new technologies, diagnostics. And then so we produce reports, and those reports go to a panel of experts who decide whether or not the technology should be adopted for use in Wales. So we work by an adopt or justify method where, basically it's not mandatory, our recommendations are not mandatory, but you do have to justify if you're not following the recommendations. What the majority of what we tend to do is we tend to work with technologies that are further down the line than those seeking patents and regulatory approval. However, part of my role is to identify technologies that could potentially feed into our work programme. So one of the ways that we do that is through, I don't know if you're aware of Health Tech Connect. It's a place where, so it's a website then where anyone can submit their innovations at whatever stage. That could be an idea, prototype. It could be something that has regulatory approval. And then there are a number of data accessors on that website, ourselves included, NICE included, and other data accessors that deal with technologies, the sort of regulatory at the beginning of their life cycle then, if you like. And the data accessor will pick up the data accessor will pick up a technology or an idea if they think it's relevant to them. So that's where we get some of our innovations from. We also have on our we have an open topic call on our website where anybody can submit an idea for us to basically consider. So when someone submits an idea, before we kind of go into the appraisal side of things, we do a very, very brief overview of the evidence, a really, really rapid review of the topic to see if there's enough evidence for it to progress to appraisal. So anyone can submit a topic for that stage of our work. We get patients submitting topics, we get clinicians, manufacturers. And we also have a scientific advice service, which has just been launched, which does deal with technologies at the earlier phase of their life cycle. So the scientific advice service is it's a consultancy service that where we provide where we identify gaps in the evidence and how that particular individual can generate evidence that would be appropriate for it to progress through an appraisal. So yeah, that's kind of a new service. I'm not involved in that at the moment, but yeah, that's kind of an initiative.
No, really, that's a really good quick summary. Especially considering I put you on the spot.
Sorry,
that was a really good roundup of Health Technology Wales, and and definitely the Health Tech Connect, well worth a look. And really, the reason I wanted to introduce you at this point and mention Health Technology Wales is I sit on one of those panels that you mentioned earlier. I wouldn't necessarily call myself an expert, but I've got lots of experience. And the amount of times we are looking at products that may well have a strong argument that they would be beneficial if adopted by the health service. So they would either improve patient care, improve outcomes, or reduce costs, and yet there isn't enough evidence that to demonstrate, to prove the claims that the manufacturer is making. And so one bit of advice I would have, although it might be a bit early if you're still in the new product development phase, which today's event is all about, and so you haven't actually got a product that's been CE marked and is ready for marketing, it is very good idea to familiarize yourself with both Health Technology Wales and Health Tech Connect, just to help you understand where the goalposts are, really, and to start structuring your evidence portfolio now, so that by the time you get to market, you will be able to prove the benefits to the people who you're either seeking market access and procurement contracts from, or seeking finance and investment from. So no, I really would. And actually, Jessica, if you could put the web addresses to both Health Technology Wales and Health Tech Connect in the chat, then that would be a real help. I'd really appreciate that. So thank you for that. Okay, so as I said, I'm going to pick on everybody, but I'm going to go back to the to our panel just for a second, because I just want to move on to maybe a next phase, because we've covered the idea and we're well into the IP. But Mike, I wonder whether you could tell us a little bit about planning, the business plan. Maybe what it should include, and really when you're at the outset and you're still talking about inventions and ideas, what should you be considering in terms of your plan in terms of taking the project further?
Yeah, no problem. I mean, I guess there are two main reasons why a business will want to put together a business plan. Number one is for your own purposes, in terms of planning your business and what it looks like over a period of time. And secondly, when you're looking to raise funding for your business, and it's an essential document that funders will want to see, is your business plan. Current terminology tends to call it pitch decks or information memorandums, all this sort of terminology that you might have seen. But to all intents and purposes, it is a plan for your business. And what in particular funders will want to understand, some of the key things is obviously the team behind the project. So who is it who's looking to do the development? The product itself, and how you're going to develop that, and what it entails, and the IP aspects will need to be covered in that as well. the opportunity that you are looking to take advantage of. So, you know, what solution are you providing to a problem that currently exists? You know, is your product disrupting the market? Is it you know, solving a problem that you currently have? And then quite importantly then is putting some financials onto that. So how long is it going to take you to develop the product? What are the costs of the development going to be? And how that then translates into revenues and operating costs for the business once the product is commercialized. And you know, normally a business plan would cover a 3 to 5 year time horizon, and depending on the product and the development phase might be the first 12 to 18 months, and then the commercialization phase, and you get to sort of a break-even position, and then you get to a position where you're generating cash. And what an investor will obviously look for then is, if they're providing equity funding, how they're going to exit from that, and how they're going to make a return on their investment. So again, a business plan that you put in front of a funder will need to cover those aspects as well, because the funder will need to understand where their exit route is, and you know, what potential return they're going to get on that, to evaluate whether it's worthwhile them taking the risk to invest in the business.
Thank you for that. So that really is the point at which you're turning the product into a business proposition. And,
yes.
And
yes,
wrapping
yes.
those other things.
And things like, you know, we talked about you know, engaging with potential customers, things like that. Evidence to support that in a business plan is very effective. You know, if you have, I don't know, letters of intent from end users or something like that, or customer endorsements, that is, you know, that is quite important and quite very valuable sort of information to have in a, you know, in a business plan.
So supporting evidence, but going back to what we were discussing earlier, supporting evidence that strengthens your claims.
Yes,
that's great. Thank you. So Mark Bowman, so presumably everybody who walks through your door has got a fully polished, finished business plan, and they know exactly how they're going to make the first million.
We have a range of different stages of readiness when we speak to people inquiring about investment from us. I mean, I think as a general comment, you know, although there are investment readiness support schemes out there, you know, I think there is probably more that could be done to support businesses during those, you know, the business plan preparation stage. What I would say is that, you know, we as with intellectual property, we see various stages of development. Sometimes we get very, very brief investor decks coming through that really just don't have enough information in them for us to take a, you know, a considered judgment. You know, we will always engage with founders to try and work out, you know, whether they're an opportunity that is of strong interest to us. So we'll have a number of introductory discussions, run through the slide deck, point out areas where we, you know, feel that we need more information. And you know, in certain situations, the founders will then go away for a period of, you know, maybe a couple of months while they review their business plans and come back to us with a better positioned proposition. I think like a CV, a business plan does continuously evolve. You know, when we see really early stage businesses, we know that the business plan isn't going to reflect the truth. It's going to reflect a version of the truth. And, you know, with experience and with, you know, and kind of riding out all the punches that will be thrown at you during the development process, that business plan evolves. And if we get involved in a company, we you know, sit alongside the investee business, helping them to evolve that business plan. I think, Mike's point about the exit route is absolutely critical for us. We like to see, quite a lot of thought put into that at the earliest stages. By far the most common route for these kind of businesses to exit is via a trade sale to a larger competitor. So when we're evaluating businesses, we look at the market to see what type of large companies are out there, whether their interests align with the business that we're looking at, whether those larger companies are acquisitive, and if they are there examples where acquisitions have been publicized? There's nothing more annoying for me than details of the deal have not been disclosed in a press release. You can get at it through very expensive databases, but at the end of the day, it's really useful to have examples. And even when people are starting out, that kind of research is really, really useful, and it shows a level of sophistication that if they've gone out and taken the time to look at recent exits within, say, the last 5 years, that is all a really good indication of the potential of where these businesses could get to, with the right strategies being selected and the right investment being put into companies.
Thank you. So no plan survives first contact, but
absolutely.
But again, like the IP process, it's an iterative process, and you're happy to engage at an earlier stage than you're not expecting the fully finished, polished product.
No, we're not. As I said earlier, I think there is probably more that could be done at the investment readiness stage. Certainly when I was consulting at Swansea University a couple of years back, we put a lot of effort into investment readiness for the startups emerging from Swansea. Sadly that's ancient history now, but I think initiatives like that can be very helpful in terms of assisting founders before they talk to investors. And I think one of the unique things about the development bank is that many investors start off at the seed end.
Yeah.
And because of the just the fundamental economics of fund management, they tend to move up the food chain. So they, all seed investors want to become Series A investors, and so on. And that can create a little bit of a vacuum at the bottom end, at the really early stages.
Just for the room, just explain very briefly what's a seed investor and what's a Series A investor.
Yeah, well, a seed investor. Sorry, apologies to everyone. Jargon and all that.
Obviously, Mark, I know all of this already, but just
absolutely. Look, a seed investor would typically get involved. If they're an institutional seed investor, they typically get involved at a stage where a business may have already had funding from friends and family, possibly from business angels. A seed investor would get involved at the next stage, probably putting into the business somewhere between £250,000 and £500,000 to get the business through fundamental proof of commercial concept. And at that stage, the company would then move into sort of more traditional Series A type investing, where the sums involved rise to sort of a couple of million of investment. Series B then is much larger, Series C, etc. So the bank is quite unusual in offering both seed and later stage investment, because as other investors move up the food chain, they abandon the kind of seed stage investing because it's much harder to make money at that level.
Yeah.
Because by the time you exit the business, you've been heavily diluted by later stage investors. So there's an economics problem, but because of our association with Welsh Government and a desire to assist regional businesses, we haven't stopped doing that seed stage investment, but we are now able to make much larger investments. You may have seen a recent press release around the Wales Business Fund, which has been topped up again very substantially, and that means that we can, you know, now our cap on overall investment in any one company has effectively doubled. So, you know, that makes us a serious national player in terms of capability of investment, but probably a little bit of a sort of hidden secret. You know, we're operating in Wales, and I think when you talk to UK investors, there's quite a few people out there that just aren't aware of what we do.
Absolutely. So again, familiarize yourself. Talk to the team. Look at the website. Understand where the development bank is, because it might not be where you expect it to be, because the development bank offer has evolved.
Yeah, I mean, look, I've done a slide deck on the life sciences expertise within the development bank, Gwyn, and I mean, if it'd be useful, I'm more than happy to supply that for your website, because it gives a pretty good overview of what we do in life.
Absolutely, and I'm more than happy to share it with the delegates today. So maybe if you send it
happy
over
to provide that,
then we could share that. That would be really useful. Thank you for that. Okay, so just one other point that so Mark there has reviewed various business plans, and so has Mike. I've not done so much of that. In fact, I've done none of that, but I have reviewed an awful lot of funding applications in that time. And I think something that Mark pointed out there was that I think, Mark, what you're sort of alluding to is that if people have evidence and examples and can demonstrate what the near state of the art is, or the closest competitor, or what good looks like in your sector, then all of that helps to reassure funders and investors that that you fully understand the market that you're going into, and that you're not operating or developing in a bubble, because there are people who invent products in a bubble and don't really look at what the rest of the market looks like. So evidence that you understand, that you've worked on the front line, or that you've brought that kind of expertise into your team. If you don't have that kind of expertise, that market expertise, you can always bring it in as an advisor, as a non-executive board member, whatever it takes to build the expertise. It doesn't all have to come from one person, but it is important that you have that market knowledge in the team. Would that be true?
Yeah, we recognise that the team is not always complete. We expect to see gaps in the management team when we evaluate business plans. One point I would make, Gwyn, just relating to your comments on grant review, is that these days, you know, and you'll know this yourself very well, there's been quite a transformational change in the expectations from grant providers around commercial information when you submit applications. You know, there isn't a million miles of difference between an early stage application for investment and that for, say, an Innovate UK grant application. They expect you to know your markets. They expect you to know the costs of development and the regulatory pathways. A lot of this is common. So, you know, what I would say to founders is, you know, whether you're applying for a Smart Cymru award or an Innovate UK grant, or whether you're applying for investment, there's a lot of common research that you need to do to position yourself for success with those applications.
Absolutely, and it does tend to be the same questions, doesn't it? Firstly, what's your idea, and is it innovative? But then, what's your market look like? What's your plan? What's your financial structure? What's your team? And probably what you're alluding to there in terms of the two converging is that increasingly funders want to know, is your idea protectable and is it scalable? It's no good just having a great idea if either a competitor can come along and just copy you at a lower price, or if it's a great idea for you, but there's no way of scaling it up to at scale, which would be national or ideally an international market opportunity. Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to Mark Helmich, we've not heard from you for a little while, so I'm going to ask you a question, because when we've done events before, we've had a little bit of a different conversation about the business plan, and I know from your comments before that there are other things that you would like to know. So again, you've got people who come through your door saying there must be a better way of doing something, or I've got this idea, see, but I know from your experience that you like to know how many they're going to want to manufacture and what their price point is and things like that, which often that sort of thing comes out of the business plan. So would you be able to expand on that a bit, Mark?
Yeah, a big part of getting something into production is obviously understanding the numbers. If you're going to be making 20 a year, then it dictates a certain manufacturing methods that are completely different for 100,000 a year, and understanding that right from the offset. If somebody turns up and says, I've got this idea, and we agree it's a good idea, and they expect to be able to produce it at a fraction of the cost it's actually going to be, then you start off with a problem that can become insurmountable. I know somebody mentioned earlier about the idea that it's got to fit into the market. It's got to be something that people will buy. And that usually comes down to what people will value it at. So there's a huge issue with people not understanding what development costs are as well. So we present a proposal to some potential clients, and they sort of, they're expecting it to be in the low thousands, and it's 20 or 30,000 or 40,000, and it's completely out of their reach. And then they're asking us to try and point them in the direction of where they could raise money. And again, you get back to this idea that if you're looking for investment at when you've got a sketch on a piece of paper, that any investment that's going to come is going to come at a higher price than if you've got a product that's developed and almost market ready. And maybe you're looking for a license agreement or someone to fund the manufacturing of. So it is a case that we get a lot of people coming in who, yes, I've got a great idea of this product that I want to produce, and they've done some research themselves. They've gone onto Google and had a look around and are convinced that it's a brand new idea. And often you'll find that the way they've searched hasn't yielded the results, and the product does exist. Similarly, I noticed the ISPASnet was posted up earlier. That it's a great place to go and search patents, but if you don't know how to search, and it sounds fairly simple, but searching patents is quite a defined skill. I've had to go myself a few times and not been able to find anything, and then I've asked somebody who's a little bit more versed in the art, and they've sent me back 20 or 30 patents that kind of sit in the area I've been looking for. So understanding how to use that search engine is, as I said, a skill in as much as searching on Google. It's a skill that you can get badly wrong, and it can cost you a lot of time, effort, and money. We do as a company, one of the first things we do is research ourselves before issuing proposals. We don't want to be quoting for work for products that are already out there. It doesn't serve anyone well to be trying to charge people for designing a product that we just genuinely know there is a market for, but it's already filled, or there just isn't a market for. So it's a strange mix of good ideas that have already been filled, good ideas that haven't been filled, and a mix in between where you have to try and maybe add a little bit of an inventive step to the idea to get it past patents that already exist.
Simon, do you just want to come back on that, the idea of DIY patent searches?
Bad idea.
Well, I think you're right, Mark. They're based on keywords, and if you get the wrong keywords, then you won't find anything. You know, some people, it's a skill that I think you can acquire. There are commercial searching organisations out there, like Patent Seekers in Newport, for example, who will, obviously that's their job, and they'll do a really good job of trying to find what's out there already. So yeah, you're right. Just because you don't get any sort of hits, you know, don't be surprised if something does creep out the woodwork later on. And that actually is something to bear in mind throughout the patenting process. All these different patent offices do searches, and they will all find different documents.
Well, yeah. So I would just from personal experience, I would say that money spent at this end of the product development process, it's a known fact, and there is research evidence to prove it, that costs increase exponentially towards launch, and I know that one area of that is intellectual property costs. So if you can do things right early on, if you can get the searches done at this stage, and if you can go in with your eyes open with the right advice, then you might be saving yourself huge amounts of money down the line. Is that fair to say, Simon?
Yep.
One word answer. Excellent. Right. Okay, let's bring someone else in, because I know there's been a couple of other people who I'd love to hear from before we close today. So Wyn Crompton, I know you've been through the mill a few times in terms of product development. So any observations, and maybe particularly around your protection of intellectual property, research, and raising finance?
Thank you, Gwyn. Yeah, so the reason I joined today really was a sanity check, for want of a better word, and a reminder of the process for myself and the business I've got. Also, particularly networking connections. So some of the people here, Mike Fenwick, Mark Helmich, I know anyway, yourself, Gwyn. We're on this journey currently, not much more to say than that. I have raised money before with Development Bank and have exited, in fact, about 3 years ago from a previous business. I've gone through the journey. It's quite tricky. Keeping ahead of the game is one of the key things, making sure you've got enough finance. So that's an important aspect. The IP side of things is one area that we're very, very conscious of currently in terms of the development we've got and raising significant finance. In fact, certainly Series A at the very least, or possibly Series B, going back to what Mark Bowman said earlier about kind of Series A at 2 million, we're certainly going to be in that area and higher. Not much else I can say really beyond the fact that we're on this journey, and it's been a good reminder for me. So thank you all.
No, I hope it's valuable for you, and I hope we're making a few extra connections for you today, because no, it's good to have you here. So a couple of other people I'd like to just bring into the conversation, because I know that you've got opportunities that you might want to share. So Ewan, you're here. You've said in the chat very early on you've got your Calin hat on. So would you like to introduce Calin and maybe how it might be of a benefit to somebody in the product development process? Are you online? I can still, or have we lost you? I might have just introduced somebody who's already left. So right, okay. If Ewan comes back, then that would be great. It would be good to hear from him. But in the similar vein, I do hope that Sharon Hughes from Arch is online. I can see your name, Sharon, and maybe you would like to introduce Arch very briefly and tell us how you are getting involved in new product development.
Hi, Gwyn. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yeah, can hear you.
Great. Yeah, I give a quick introduction about kind of some of the work that we've been doing recently. So I'm one of the senior project managers for Arch. So Arch is a regional collaboration in health, and we are funded jointly by Swansea University, Hywel Dda Health Board and Swansea Bay University Health Board. So it's a tripartite, and we have kind of about three priorities that we focus on. So there's workforce education and skills, then we have kind of clinical transformations, and then the other strand is research, enterprise and innovation. I tend to lean towards more the research, enterprise and innovation projects, and there are a couple of planners who focus more on the clinical service transformations across the region of South West Wales. Some of the work that we've been looking at recently, and one of the major project developments that I'm overseeing, is the Swansea Bay City Deals campuses development, which is a two-phase development across both Singleton and Morriston sites. And I mean Morriston Hospital and Singleton Hospital sites. And the focus at the moment is looking at submitting the final outline business case. So we've just finished preparing the joint vision, but we've still got some unanswered questions, and I've been discussing with Debbie from Medi Wales, how do we best engage the industry sector and the private sector to ask them what they actually want out of engagement within the health sector. And we want to know the kind of plethora of challenges that industry or private sector face engaging with health, and then vice versa, what are the major challenges to overcome. Because at the moment, a lot of the things that we know are based on assumptions, or maybe based on some brief conversations or discussions that, and nothing's been done to kind of interrogate the sector to find out what do we need to overcome. What is a legislative barrier, what is maybe a regional or a local barrier or an internal policy blocker that, something that's challenging and stopping from innovation happening. So that's kind of one of the main focuses at the moment, is finding out actually from the horse's mouth then, what do people want from being able to engage with health, and how can we be better at it? And I don't think we quite know the answers to those questions yet. So that's going to be the main focus, working in partnership with the likes of Medi Wales and other organisations over the next few months.
Oh, well, thank you for that, Sharon. Well, you're doing a cracking job today. Turning up to the events, introduce yourself. I don't think you'll have any lack of interest in terms of companies who want to engage. So thank you for that. So firstly, I'll bring somebody else in to maybe give another viewpoint on this. But just from a personal perspective, I would say that during product development process, I think I've already mentioned it in terms of funding applications, but also in terms of raising finance. It's really important to have the right expert knowledge, and so while I'm reviewing Innovate UK funding applications from innovators and from small companies who are looking to enter the healthcare sector in particular, it's worth so much to see on that funding application that the company has engaged with clinicians, clinical expertise, nurses, the end users, the people who are going to use the products, and whether that's in a scientific capacity, maybe if we're talking about healthcare diagnostics or pharmaceuticals, or whether it's in a very practical sense, whether it's a user experience for a medical device. That kind of engagement and evidence of that kind of engagement is really worth a huge amount when it comes to companies raising finance and just proving their credibility. So I'm sure we could have a whole event, Sharon, on how we can improve engagement. But just in terms of the theme for this event, I would just say that I would advise any company or academic who was looking to develop a product that proper clinical engagement right from the start, again, will save you money, stop you making mistakes, going down blind alleys, but will also will also really add credibility to your product development. So we've got, I think I've got one more person, and Daniel. So from your introduction that you made earlier, you might be exactly those people, that company that is developing products in the healthcare sector. So maybe you could give Sharon a bit of feedback as well as introducing yourself and your product.
Well, thank you. Well, I mean, we develop products that get used by biopharmaceutical companies, academics all around the world, actually, for a very specialist type of analysis, biochemical analysis. And most of that actually isn't covered by patents, doesn't require a huge amount of investment to develop those sorts of products. But when it comes down to biomarkers, which is something we've got more into in the past 10 years with EU funding, PhD consortia, it's a whole different realm, and the investment that's required to back it up, and the learning curve of patents, regulations has been very much where we've been. And we've done Innovate UK applications. Some of them have been successful, the majority of them aren't. And I'd say for a start that, yes, the clinical engagement is something that we want to have. We develop products that, so biomarkers and precision medicine. So you hear the term precision medicine used a lot. And I have a bit of a bugbear about it, because you can have a biomarker that looks at something very general, and then you've got a big market. But when you're looking at precision medicine, you might have a very a narrow group of patients actually that are interested in or are going to respond, are going to have this biomarker, going to identify them. And what we've found in the past has been that in those particular cases with precision medicine, that it's almost too precise, there's too few clients, as it were, patients who are going to benefit from it. So although they could benefit from identification of a particular form of disease, they don't necessarily get the support from the clinicians who say, well, actually, you know what, diabetes is type 1 and type 2 we're really interested in, not this small subform of diabetes. So we certainly get engagement with clinicians, and we'd like more of that. So for us at the moment, we're finding the best ways to go through various different organizations that try and meet you up with the clinicians. So we're interested in inflammatory bowel disease. So there's an organization called Gut Hub. And so they can marry you up with the right people. The NIHR is good as well at marrying you up with the right people. And this is really for doing those very early clinical studies, because we're all about, for biomarkers, is evidence. Mm. So you've got to have great volumes of evidence, I would say. And so it doesn't matter how many people you've analysed, you'll probably always get someone say, oh, could you just analyse another cohort of patients? So we do find ourselves sort of at that stage, and then trying to get the funding to do that is something that I think we need more experience in, more advice in, because it's, as I say, it's a very different market to the one we originally started off in. I don't know if I've really got anything more to say. I was really here today just to sort of learn to hear or confirm what I already thought, that patents are important, investments important, the board of the company is important, and regulations are really important as well. So lots of important things to be concerned about.
That's really interesting, and you've just prompted something else when you were talking about Gut Hub that I think I briefly mentioned patient reported outcomes and the patient voice in product development. But just one thing I would say, possibly partly in reply to Sharon, but also a more general comment, is that engaging the patient voice in product development is important. but doing it through the right channels is equally important. And an awful lot, probably most small businesses don't have the expertise to start going out and talking to patient groups directly. So engaging with either healthcare organisations or the charitable sector can be a tremendously both. It's a safe way of engaging with patient input, but in my experience is it's also a very rewarding way of getting input into your product development without doing it in a way that could be that could be misconstrued or cause complications. So yeah, I'm glad you made that point. Mark Bowman, I'm just going to give you a moment to come back on what Daniel said there, because I know that you'll probably so precision medicine and very specific biomarkers being too smaller, potentially too small a market segment for commercial viability.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a very interesting point. You know, the health economics is a critical part of the the business case for investing in biotherapeutic companies. And I think the point made around precision medicine, you almost, within a particular disease, you're almost creating orphan diseases within a disease by focusing on particular subsets through this precision medicine technologies. Yeah, I mean it as Daniel was saying, I mean it means that the numbers that you are potentially going to treat, if you have a very highly selective drug candidate, are could be potentially very, very small, and that will alter the value of the underlying product. Now I think in some cases, if you look at the costs of the type of drugs that are targeted in that way, they are extremely high, and the development costs behind them are going to be have to be recovered. And I think that has enormous societal implications in terms of accessibility to healthcare, because at some point, in particular, state-funded health services are going to be undermined by the sheer cost of these extremely sophisticated approaches to treatment. So I think I don't have any specific answers, but what I would say is generally there is going to have to be quite a fundamental rethink of how of healthcare funding models and insurance models in order to cater for these very specialized therapies. And we're seeing that, already in terms of healthcare rationing. You see reference to the postcode lottery in terms of treatment. You see NICE making evaluations around whether these medicines are cost effective, and rejecting some on the basis of that metric. It's a very, very complicated picture at the moment, and I'm not sure how you resolve that within a cash constrained publicly funding healthcare service.
Absolutely. And often the case for precision medicine is made, and it's about not wasting drugs on people that won't respond to them. So it's that side of the equation. So you have to balance in the cost saving as well as the cost of the product development, which is quite a complicated thing to do in a healthcare setting.
And I think, yeah, and again, I mean, going back to the health economics aspect, the costs involved in getting some of those studies done for early stage businesses is quite often prohibitive, but it is a really important, going right back to the start of this discussion, you have to have a business there. And, if you create a very sophisticated solution that's unaffordable, that might not be the case.
that is a very good place to stop there. I am now, because we've kind of gone full circle, and I think we've made some really interesting points, discoveries, clarifications. So I've just put in the chat that this is the last call for anyone who has any questions. I'm sure all of the experts that have been on the panel today are very happy to be contacted afterwards. So if your question is something that comes to your mind after the event, then please just let us know and we'll put you in touch. But before we finish, I just want to go once round the panel and ask you to just give us your closing remark, your top tip, the one thing that you would want anybody to go away from this event to remember, and or if I've forgotten something, or if we've not covered something and you're sitting there thinking, when's he going to mention this? Then now is the time to say it. So can I start with Mark Helmich and just ask you to give a few closing remarks? Yes,
my first and foremost would be pick the phone up. It's free. It's you might have to pay for the call. Depends on your service provider, of course. Should add that, but effectively the initial conversations are free. You know, we'll talk through your idea, we'll issue a proposal, and until you get the proposal and say yes, we want you to start work, there's no costs involved. Why wouldn't you speak to people who've had 35 years experience in it? I'm pretty sure it's the same with IP advice. Those initial conversations are basically part and parcel of what we do to try and win business. We've got to take make our best efforts to make you understand that what we can achieve, and part of that is putting that expertise in front of you for free to start with. So yeah, pick up the phone if you've got an idea but you're not sure where to go. You can always call either myself or Claire, who's also on the call. Claire Banks, our business development manager. And those initial conversations, meetings, you'll get to speak to the engineers directly. It won't just be a sales pitch. You can have conversations, technical conversations. And the last thing I'll say, because before Simon does, is sign an NDA before you discuss your product with anyone.
So sign an NDA, don't disclose your secrets, but talk to people.
Yeah.
And sadly, we're probably preaching to the converted here, because the kind of people that have attended today's meeting are the ones that are quite happy engaging and networking and talking to people. But yeah, it's a very well made point. So let's go on to Simon, and Simon, your final.
I would say what Mark said again. No, absolutely right. Pick up the phone. Yeah. If you want a patent application, then file that application before you make any public disclosure of your invention. And the one dirty topic we haven't talked about today is one of inventorship and ownership. Who owns the invention and who made the invention? That all needs to be sorted out as well, most preferably before you file your patent application. So not going to say any more on that and go on about it for hours.
So I've just seen Victoria's comment there, and it's a very fair comment. But I'm not sure whether we have the expertise to cover it at the moment. But it's a good opportunity to bring Debbie in, because I do like to bring Debbie in at the end of each event, just to have her thoughts and on proceedings. But Debbie, you've been talking about AI. In medical setting as well, haven't you? So maybe you could. I know you're not a regulatory expert in AI, but maybe maybe there's some way we can take that forward with Victoria offline.
Yeah, I just put in the chat actually, and it did come up in a meeting yesterday. Specifically, AI and the MHRA is a difficult area, let alone for any of the companies trying to navigate this landscape. So yeah, regulatory, it's a whole difficult area of its own. The regulatory consultants are very much in demand at the moment, and quite hard to get hold of, and it's expensive and bureaucratic process, but I think, as it was pointed out earlier on in the beginning of this event, once you've got through the pain, then of course the business market is then yours, and you've got it protected, and you've got approvals, and so it's a massive barrier to entry for anybody else coming up to do the same thing. Yeah, I will pick that up. We'll be running a couple more events following this one. Finance and funding, again, I think, because you can't go anywhere or do anything without money. And a specific one on regulatory as well to follow in the next few weeks. So keep an eye out for that. More general comments to make about how the sector's operating at the moment. I think there's very much a feel post-pandemic, having a lot of conversations and meetings about new product development, about new collaborations, companies looking for new technologies, new partners to work with, a lot of change within the health service, but also the Welsh NHS is very much engaged and working with partners and keen to talk to people about projects and what we call clinical access. So that's an area I'm spending a lot of time working on at the moment. And investors as well. I think obviously Mark and Mike, you're very much more in touch than I am, but it feels like there is quite a lot of money around at the moment, new products, new projects coming through. It's a very active time and a good time to be talking to potential partners.
Thank you very much, Debbie. So anybody who wants to make contact with anybody who's been at today's event, or in fact just pick up on any of the things Debbie's just said, please drop her a line. So thank you for that, Debbie. So I just shoehorned you in there because I thought you'd want to respond to Victoria. So thank you for doing that as well. But I'm going to carry on with our closing remarks. And Mike Fenwick, you are now top of my screen. So so it's your turn. What would be your final top tip and closing remark?
I guess in relation to raising finance, a couple of things really. I suppose number one is things tend to take longer than you anticipate and cost more than you anticipate. So when you are looking to raise finance, build in a certain level of contingency into your plans, because the worst thing you can do is have to go back to funders cap in hand after 3 to 6 months saying you've run out of money. So I think it's important to make sure that you build that into your business plan and into your funding applications. And the second thing would be around valuation, because typically, early stage businesses will need to give away some of the value in terms of equity. Always difficult to put a value on an early stage business, but important that you as business owner would understand the value in your business for your discussions with equity providers, and bear in mind that as you go through the funding process from seed funding to Series A funding, you'll have to give away more and more of the equity as that process goes along. So important that you have a handle on that.
Thank you for that. And of course, your team and other financial experts can help and advise on that. So
yeah, absolutely,
you're not on your own. Right. So Mark Bowman, final comments.
Yeah, I mean, I think just going back to your point, Debbie's point about there being quite a lot of money around at the moment, I think, we certainly have plenty of resource in place to invest in the right opportunities. And I think, the key word there is right. And I think that is a function of, people with new businesses doing their background research, talking to professionals, such as the ones we have on this call around issues like IP and design, and understanding, the amount of investment they require. But there is certainly no lack of in investment. One of the things I've been positive about during lockdown is the fact that actually angel investment remains buoyant. I think having been a veteran of 2008 onwards, there was a real liquidity crunch at that time. and you know, a lot of investors froze up and circled their wagons around existing portfolio companies. I think, you know, there's a natural tendency to do that, but I think the response from the UK and Welsh governments around providing you know, grant support has been very positive. I think looking ahead, the only perhaps warning point on the horizon, you know, as a result of these schemes, you do have some very heavily leveraged businesses, and by that I mean, you know, you have a lot of companies with a lot of debt on their balance sheet, and you know, whilst that wasn't the focus in the immediate you know, point when when businesses were struggling, you still have to service that debt. And I think, you know, there's probably going to be some issues around that going forward. But we've got through it.
So there'll be a bit of restructuring and potentially a slightly different perspective from funding and finance providers.
Yeah, I mean, my guess is a lot of the government schemes will kick the can down the road. That'll be a sort of general approach to this. You know, there's already been, I think, an extension up to 15 years for repayment for some of these grants, so and loans. So I think that's helpful. It complicates investment in the sense that, you know, who comes first if the company fails. There are those issues to consider. But I think in the general sense, in the healthcare sector, we're actually not in bad shape.
No. And there has been some stimulus in that sector for obvious reasons in some parts.
Absolutely, you know, and digital healthcare is a really good example where fantastic new opportunities have opened up, and you know, Victoria can give you chapter and verse on that, but it's you know, it's been a really exciting time for those type of companies because of new opportunities emerging.
Great, thank you. If anybody wants to continue the conversation with Mark, Simon, or Mike, then please do get in touch. They are all trusted advisors from our perspective, who we've worked with for years, and so would have no problem in recommending whatsoever. I want to say thank you so much to all four of them. For their time today and their wisdom, and thank you that everybody I picked on, and I did pick on everybody, and everybody made a valuable contribution to the conversation. So we did bounce around a bit, and we did cover a lot of ground, but I really am grateful for everybody's contribution and involvement today. If I was going to take away some top tips, I would say that talk to people. Talk to people in the sector that you're marketing your product in, engage with them, talk to the advisors, talk to the experts, and also research your market, research your product, research your IP. You will have to become an expert in your sector if you are going to own a business in that sector, and the sooner you get your head around that, the more valuable that knowledge will be. And the other thing that really just came across from everybody, whether you're asking GX Design to design something and you need to tell them how much the product's going to cost or how many you need manufactured, or whether you're talking to the development bank or GS Verdi or Able and Imre, if you need a business around your product, it's not a hobby. You're not just developing a product in isolation. You need a business plan, and the questions that you're going to be asked in developing a business plan are probably the same questions that you're going to be asked by investors, and the same questions you're going to be asked by funding providers, and they are going to be around knowing your market, knowing your plan, knowing your product, knowing your risks, knowing your team, and so the sooner you write those down in some kind of plan, doesn't have to be War and Peace, but the sooner you write those down in some kind of plan, the better you will have to have a draft working document that you can adapt and modify and change as and when you talk to the experts. So hopefully that's been useful, valuable. It's been really enjoyable from me, and I really am looking forward to meeting all of you face to face at an event soon, where we can actually sit in the same room and discuss these things and have a coffee or a beer afterwards. So hopefully that will be coming very soon. Cross fingers. And finally, thank you very much to Izzy, who puts these events together and has been sitting in the background there throughout this event, but has also been the person who's made sure that we're all here. We've all got the link. We've all been registered, and we've got speakers and delegates. So thank you very much to Izzy for that. And I'm going to leave it there. And have a great day, everybody. Bye-bye.